Welcome to the Weird Faith Podcast Experience with your hosts, Josh Weddle, Phil Wayman, and Scott McClure. It's going to be a weird Wednesday, guys. We're so glad that you joined us for the Weird Faith Podcast today. I got Scott with that one. I think you like that one. Yeah, we'll have to start doing impressions with how we do our opening. But hey, welcome to the Weird Faith Podcast. We're glad to have you guys for another week. We've got an awesome show ahead of us today. Before we get started, though, I think Phil's got some shout outs for us.
Yeah, absolutely. We got quite a few this week. One was from Josh Tremblay. He's one of our weirdos. I think he watches while he's working out or something like that, or listens. He said, as a guy that can't sit through a baseball game, Scott being able to name that many teams last week made him want to vote for you. But he said, I locked it up talking about the Dark Side of Nature Instagram.
Hey, we're going to come back to that.
Yeah. It's kind of inspired this week's topic, I think. But he voted for me for that. Although Josh might have been the one that got me on it. I don't know. Somebody else did for sure. But he said, personally, he struggles with being over competitive. He did mostly as a kid until he actually had some defeats in his life and other people began to lift him up. And he realized how important that was in our lives to have someone lift us up. Ryan Sigmund voted for Scott just to show him some love. So
there we go.
If you don't vote for Scott, he will not think you love him. So continue to do that.
I feel like I've seen Ryan vote for Scott most of the time.
Yeah,
even when Scott hasn't won it. I feel like Ryan's always trying to see Scott do something weird.
Yep. And then Janie Carrico said she can't bring herself to vote for any of us as the weirdest. I don't know why, but that's a sweet thing to think about. And then she also said, personal weird baseball fact for David and herself. In 1974, they were at the season opener for the Cincinnati Braves versus the Reds. And at that game, we saw Gerald Ford, who was the president, throw out the first pitch. The game was interrupted by a streaker. And Hank,
it was not Gerald Ford, right?
I think it was David.
I hope it wasn't David. That's what I was about to say. David Carrico.
And then another thing, Hank Aaron tied Babe Ruth's home run record. And the game went into 11 innings. So that's a pretty eventful baseball game there.
That never happens.
Yeah, right.
Usually 3 hours of 1-0.
Yeah, exactly. So pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah. Well, today we're going to talk about a couple of different things. But before we do this, we need to announce our Weird Award winner, which you kind of heard a little bit about that already. But there was some miscommunication, some miscounts. So we have a Weird Award winner today, but Josh is going to introduce that. And this is a special opportunity because we have our very first in-house guest to help with this. So Josh, it's all you.
We do. So Scott doesn't know about this, but we actually are going to be totally fair about our Weird Award winner today. So we're actually going to crown both of these awesome gentlemen as Weird Award winners for the first time. We'll probably not do that very often because this isn't a participation trophy thing, right? We've got to have one. But I thought it would be fun. We had a vote for each of these guys. So welcome onto the show. First off, we're going to have Safari Scott. And when we read through this stuff, Scott's going to wear a safari hat over here. But welcoming on our first guest on the podcast, we have Dino the Dingo Dog.
All right.
So this is Dino, and he's going to be on the show with us today. And he's going to go hang out with Phil for a second. And so, Phil, as you read your facts, you're going to have to speak through Dino here. And at least one of the facts have to be in an Australian accent.
All right.
So through Dino, okay?
What was the guy's name on the Nickelodeon show? It's been our childhood. That they were like jungle safari people.
Oh, the wild thornberries.
Yeah, Nigel.
Nigel Thornberry.
Yeah, he looks a lot like
He
him.
did kind of look like him.
Never yet. It's the nose, right?
What was the kid's name that was just like, all the time? He's just like a tornado all the time.
But today's inspiration came from a few different places. So yesterday, one of our biggest weirdos to date, Logan Bowling, stopped by the house. I'll be honest and say I thought a door-to-door evangelist was coming by the house because he showed up at my house in a full like suit and tie.
Would you have rather it been someone like that?
Maybe. No, he was in town for internship interview, so he stopped by the house. But he has one of the amazing stories of what happens when you listen to our show, which I have an echo in my own hat right now. This is kind of awkward. But we've had people nearly fall off the treadmill, people laughing out loud hysterically at Planet Fitness.
Yes.
And this individual, Logan, we won't say exactly what happened because he's a little bit embarrassed by it. But he got a speeding ticket. We'll just flat out say it. He got a speeding ticket cut because he was listening to our show because Josh said he would. The dog's looking at you. Josh said that we were highlighting him on the show, so he was waiting for it and so lost in the episode that he got pulled over because he didn't know how fast he was going.
Oh, no,
Yeah, just
that's
with
terrible.
no regard for human life around him.
We don't
it's
validate
dangerous.
that. We don't
Come on,
validate speeding tickets.
What do you think about that, Dino?
The other inspiration was last week. Phil admitted that he and Josh have a guilty pleasure of watching dark animal videos on social media, and we're going to hear more about that shortly. But then also every Thursday I spend my afternoon with the people at the Sober Living House, the men. And this actually came up in conversation last week, what we're going to talk about. And so shout out to those guys for being incredible. But today's episode, we're going to talk about some wild animals, but I want to have some explanation and clarification from these guys. When you say you guys spend time watching dark animal videos, what exactly are you talking about?
So I'm kind of surprised. Have we not sent you any of those yet?
You've not.
So there's an Instagram page called The Dark Side of Nature. Is that right, Phil?
Yeah, something
Dark
like
Side of Nature. They just post very raw, real moments of nature. Like it could be some kind of animal eating another animal or killing it, or somebody's finger getting bitten off by a lion when they're trying to mess around with it.
Most of the time, it's people being dumb with animals.
If you see a person in the video, you know it's about to be like, oh, this person was way too confident.
Right.
They really thought they could tame this thing and be in control of it. And a lot of times they walk off with one less finger or something.
Animals
like
are
that.
not
So-
our friends.
What's the craziest thing that you've watched on there?
Sully is just waiting for you to fall asleep
Dude, he's
in
sizing
a
me
real
up, yeah.
deep sleep till he comes after
What's
you.
your craziest thing you've watched on there?
One that just happened recently was a guy that was feeding a bunch of alligators and threw a piece of meat into the alligator pen, and one of the alligators accidentally got a hold of one of the other alligator's arms and just twisted, and it just, as you can imagine, it was bad.
Yes, it's really jarring when you're scrolling and I'm like, oh, look what Clarksburg Baptist Church posted. We got a Good Friday service coming. Slide down one more
We need to
piece.
tag him in this video and say
That
we're highlighting
video,
it.
that was one of the crazier ones I've seen because this alligator, just for sport, just for fun, was just like, I'm going to grab this
And it
other
was
one
so easy,
and
too.
then just roll until I rip its leg
Yeah,
off.
don't mess with alligators.
If you've been around Josh long enough, you know that he has a lot of questions that he likes to ask, like fun questions. So he has a fun question he wants to ask us for today.
Yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit more about these animal experiences and stories, but if you could tame one animal to be your friend, be your pet, some kind of wild exotic animal, if you could pick one to actually be your pet and be tamed, what would you pick? We want to hear from you guys in the comments as well, but I'd love to ask Scott first.
So I have two options. Both are cute and cuddly, either a penguin or an otter.
Penguins smell terrible.
They do smell terrible.
Have you gone to like
ever
a
gone to
penguin
the zoo?
house?
It smells
it's the
bad.
worst.
Man, I
It
guess
smells
I've
like
never been
fish.
that
It's more
close.
about
to
what
it.
you feed them.
Yeah, exactly.
I think
What was the second
otters.
Oh, yeah.
I
Otters
just
are the best.
I just get a big smile on my face every time I go to the zoo and I go to like the otter exhibit and they're just floating around on their back in the water, like playing with their food, like trying to open up an oyster. Like it's just adorable. I think they would be my best friend.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Phil,
Mine would be, so this is a little bit of a different take on it. So I'm training this animal, right? And he's going to be my friend. So mine would be a kangaroo, but I would mostly train it to be a guard kangaroo, right?
Oh.
And I would have a moat around my house because I don't know if you know this about kangaroos, but they are known to hide in the water and wait till you come after them, and then they will drown you.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh no, I saw something about that the other day.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So they'll like stand chest deep in water and hope that you come to them, and then they'll just hold your head underwater.
By the way, kangaroos are jacked.
Absolutely.
Dude, so
It's a
what
mean looking
that was the
animals.
movie, right? Kangaroo Jack.
Yeah, but I don't think it was for the
called
same
it that.
reason.
They need to change the movie title to where it's just like swollen muscles
up.
because kangaroos are fiercely muscular and they're scary to look at. Have you guys ever seen the video of the kangaroo that had the dog in the headlock?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
And so the dog's owner just runs up. He's like, the kangaroo's just choking him out. Sorry, Tina. But the owner comes up and is just like, no, and squares up. And the kangaroo, sure enough, does the same thing. And he punches the kangaroo in the face and it just looks at him like,
it was,
how dare you?
it was shocked.
I guess it's the feet that did a big deal though for
Oh
kangaroos.
yeah, they kick
that
hard.
They messed
Katie
up.
showed me a video on TikTok. You all probably watch the same kind of videos. It was basically like the pouch of the kangaroo and like kind of, it was a lot of the stuff. I was like, this is really kind of gross.
Yeah.
The little baby kangaroo just hanging out in there. I'm like, this is kind of disgusting.
I thought that's where Phil was going, was that he wanted to train it to keep Phil in.
Yeah, that'd be great too.
One of our Photoshop experts, make sure you get a picture of Phil tucked inside a kangaroo's pouch.
That'd be the best picture ever.
Yeah, I think I would probably have to go with something that was just like larger than life, because it would be so cool to be able to say like, I have this giant whale tamed and like I can go
amazing.
like just surf across the oceans on top of this whale stuff. I'd have to pick something really big like that.
I've always wanted, like, I know, genetic manipulation is ethically probably not the right idea, but if I could have a genetically modified miniature elephant, not you just,
so
maybe
you don't want a full size.
No, I don't want to get like
Like a
squished.
teacup elephant.
Like a
almost picked
teacup
an
elephant, like a pig, right? And it's just running around your house, squirting water at you. That would just be amazing.
It's way better than a dog.
That's amazing.
That's a weird looking dog you got there. Yeah. I think I'd probably have to pick. I almost went elephant because it'd be cool to ride too. And I feel like it'd just
Downtown
be,
Clarksburg is probably not the right place for an elephant.
They're not ready for
I've
it
seen
yet.
weirder things.
That's
in
true,
downtown
right?
Clarksburg.
But this idea of taming animals, and we've seen humanity be able to tame some crazy animals, and they've done amazing things. So I've had these guys prepare some fun facts or some stories about some animals that have been trained to do some wild things. So which one do you all want to start?
I can't. Before we go any further, though, we all can tell Phil has had church puppet ministry experience before, right? Because Phil has just owned this thing. We might not do an episode without DM. I could tell over here the way you were so quick to move. It's like
He's
Phil
experienced.
has done his share of
He's
puppet
no Jim
ministry.
Henson, but he's
Well,
close.
this is not a Muppet, though. You give me a Muppet, we'll see what happens.
It's great. But so I wanted to share a lot of mine. I was trying to find stories of people taming animals to do weird things, but almost everything I searched ended up, this person got mauled by this animal that they raised
exactly
for
right.
3 years. But you've probably heard of Christian the lion, and this was a story back in the 70s. I think it was 1969. This lion was born, I think, in a zoo. I don't know how this happened, but the lion was like auctioned or sold at like a department store in like London.
Sounds
or
about
something
right.
like that. I didn't know. I tried to go back and look at the whole story because I've seen the end result video of this thing, and we'll get there here in a second. But
I can't imagine it's good.
this one is actually a hopeful and,
good,
and positive one. But
We're going to show someone getting mauled to death.
so these two guys in London raised this lion in the basement of their department store called the Sophisticat. That was the name of their store. But they raised this lion in the basement, and they had an agreement with a church down the road that they could go exercise it out in the church graveyard. So we've had some weird requests here at CBC, but nobody's ever come over and said, "Hey, can we use your property to exercise our lions?" Right. But anyway, so he becomes 2 years old. It's way too much work for two people, and he's way too big. So they had somebody help them bring it to the wild and help get it get it, acclimated to what it would be like in Africa. And but they go back like 2 years later, and you've probably seen the video before of the reunion, and they are just out there with the wildlife, risking it all. A lion could have just pounced on them and ate them, but these two guys were so confident that Christian the lion would recognize them. And so we have a video of that reunion we're going to share with you guys real quick. So here he comes. See, he's spotted him.
I'm pretty nervous.
This is where I would have pooped my pants, right here. All right, he's moving up.
Hey,
big hugs. Big hugs.
Ooh.
All he did.
That's probably better than a Ron Williams hug.
I don't know, man. But once it gets up on its hind legs like that, I can't imagine how heavy that thing is. But he just wanted to hug them and kind of play with them and put his face in their face.
That's insane.
It's such a cool story. But most of the time, that's not the ending. So don't get any ideas about, trying to raise an exotic animal. It most of the time doesn't work out that well. I've read some pretty terrible stories today, and I'm not in a great mood. I've been feeling kind of depressed today.
Well, all of mine are hopeful too. So just if you're thinking about maybe turning it off because animal carnage is not your thing, don't worry about it. We're going to stay pretty hopeful. The first one, we've got a picture here of I got to do a Australian accent. I might as well get that
Dino.
out of the way.
Remember, it's Dino that's telling the story.
So this is a special story for Dino too, because he might be hopeful to be like this dog here. So I'll let him tell the story. Shrimp on the barbie. Got to get
for a limited time at the Outback.
The town of Rabbit Hash, Kentucky, has some unusual mayors over the past 20 years. Since 1998, 4 dogs have been elected to the position of the mayor of this town of 350 people. And this pit bull's name is Brenneth Paltrow.
Brenneth.
Bren, for short. Yeah, exactly. And he currently holds the seat of mayor. According to the town's official website, the people of Rabbit Hash generally elect mayors based on the condition of their willingness to have their belly scratched. What do you think about that?
Dino, you're pretty into this, man.
That's amazing, Dino. Thank you.
This was Dino's favorite story of the day. Awesome. That's pretty cool.
They have dog mayors.
Yeah, dog mayors. The world might be a better place if we just had more dog mayors.
What was the dog's name again?
Brenneth Paltrow.
Brenneth Paltrow.
Bren
2024. There we go.
There we go.
Hope for the future.
That dog looked like Champion off Parks and Rec. The three-legged dog.
I vote for Champion.
Brenneth and Christian for president and vice president.
I like it.
I have that vice president that's an enforcer of the lion, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. Here's a scary story of people being, overconfident with their ability to have pets that should not be pets. So I've always been terrified, yet also really interested in snakes. I know snakes. I've told you guys I love watching nature documentaries. Actually, I think it was my birthday a few months ago, and Candace was like, "You don't want to get out and do something else?" And we had this snake documentary on, and I was just like, "Dude, I could just watch this all day." I remember her just being like, "This is the weirdest birthday ever." We're watching like Deadliest Snakes of Africa or something like that. Anyway, so I read this story about this woman who had a pet snake, and it was like 7 feet long. I don't know what kind of snake it would have been. I know, Dino, it's pretty scary. Would have had to be some kind of like python, boa constrictor, something like 7 feet long, this massive snake. But the woman ended up taking the snake to a vet and asking some questions about, hey, my snake stopped eating and I can't figure out why my snake won't eat anything. And so the vet just kind of like takes a step back and was like, hey, does the snake like sleep with you, cuddle with you, lay out next to you, kind of stretch itself out next to you? And she said, yeah, the snake's really comfortable around me. So it sleeps with me sometimes and it stretches out. And the vet told this person, what's happening is the snake is getting ready. It's sizing you up and trying to prepare itself to eat you.
I remember that story.
So the snake was trying to elongate itself and make sure it was clear of everything else so it would have room to digest this woman that thought this snake was her best friend. But really the snake just wanted to swallow her whole.
So a man's best friend is not a boa constrictor. No.
I saw under some comments where I read that, they were like, life's lesson, man. Just because they lay right next to you don't mean they're not a snake.
I'm convinced that is exactly how all animals feel about us.
Oh, if you have a cat,
your cat is waiting for it.
They're waiting for it. Like you ever met a crazy cat lady? Like the people who have like 7 cats. You know that if this is so terrible. This should be featured on your shows. If you were to die and all you had was a bunch of cats and no one knew you, the cats are going to eat you.
That's right.
Let's be honest. They know.
Dino knows. He's had that bad feeling about cats his whole life.
Cats have this instinct that our ancestors way back used to worship them, right? And so they know.
Yeah,
when they sit there and just stare at you, they're sizing you up.
Yeah.
What you got?
All right. So this next picture is a picture of a ferret. And I don't know if you knew this, but ferrets can be the right-hand animals of electricians. Electricians have actually used ferrets to run conduits through buildings. That happened in the U.S. Space Command Missile Warning Center. They sent them through 40-foot long conduits. Others ran TV cables under Buckingham Palace to broadcast the wedding of Prince Charles and Princess Diana. But they would use these ferrets to run these cables. That's kind of cool.
That's really cool.
Interesting.
I kind of needed a ferret at my house recently.
My dog does nothing for me.
He might be able to fit in one of those. He's pretty long.
You got any more?
I just wanted to share a personal story.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Scott asked us, hey, if you've had any bad run-ins with animals too. Phil was actually here for this. He may have a video on his phone. We went apple picking. I'll just go ahead and say I hate insects. Bugs. I don't even know if that really counts as like, I don't know.
They're
maybe
animals.
they are animals. It feels like they're their own thing. I hate bugs. And I was maliciously attacked by a horsefly about a year and a half ago. We were with Candace and I went with Phil and Tori and their family apple picking, and Candace and I were down at another end of the orchard, and I think Phil had enough time to realize what was happening and then turn his phone on video. Because I was far off, but our listeners, you guys probably know that feeling when like animals kind of freak me out because you don't know what they're doing. You don't know when you hit that panic where it's like, this thing is actually going to try to kill me right now. I've never been so afraid of anything before in my life. And it caused a huge fight between me and Candace because Phil and Tori look over and I'm yelling at Candace while I'm like spinning in circles and flailing, and I just start sprinting
she was just
down this line of apples because I kept telling Candace this thing was dive bombing me over and over, and it wasn't just like a couple times and then it left. It was like, dude, this thing has it out for me. And I hit panic where I was just like, I'm never going to shake this thing and it's going to kill me. And all it was a horsefly, but I just remember screaming, and Candace thought it was the funniest thing ever. And then it winds up landing on my back. And I'm screaming at Candace to like smack it. I'm like, punch me as hard as you can. I don't care. And she's just like kind of pulling at my shirt and just laughing. It was not.
Yeah, I think I eventually ended up smacking you a couple times, but I think you got to us.
Yeah, I sprinted and it followed me the whole time. Just dived
it was pretty nuts.
So 2 things.
Terrifying.
One, if you have that video.
I'll have to see if I can find it.
We will post it on our social media page the day after if we have it.
Yeah.
The second thing, Ron, you're a Photoshop master. You had the perfect opportunity. You know the famous Michael Jordan meme? I took it personally. Like Photoshop, what was it? You said a dragonfly?
A horsefly.
A horsefly. And we'll have Josh with the Michael Jordan meme that I took it personally.
Or like a versus, like where we're kind of looking at each other with like gloves on or something. I got attacked by a dog one time too. Just very briefly.
That's just lesser. I also got attacked by a lion.
This was terrifying. I was
big of a deal.
The horse was working. Bad one. Yeah, it was worse. It was. I was working seasonally with UPS, and there was this neighborhood dog that it would follow our truck around everywhere we went, and I thought it was going to be my friend. His name was Fred. It was like a beagle. And I dropped a package off. It was like the third house that it followed me to, and it just finally decided it had enough of me, and it sprinted at me, growling, teeth out, and man, Dino, you wouldn't do it, Dino. You wouldn't do it. You're the best. Anyway, that was pretty terrifying too.
This is the last one. If you've been waiting for a heartwarming story, here it is. Chuck and Luann Betts live in Florida, and they found an orphan squirrel after Hurricane David, and they raised it as family. and they taught it to ride on their shoulders. And eventually they would try to get in the pool, and the squirrel would stay on their shoulders. So here's a video of what they ended up being able to train this squirrel to be able to do. They purchased a remote control boat for his daughter, and they taught Twiggy, the squirrel, how to water ski. And if you've seen a video of a squirrel water skiing, it's this squirrel, Twiggy, and it's, brothers. There's been like 9 Twiggies since they start. But once they retire from water skiing, they do like, thousands of shows since 1979, I think is when it started. But they're gray squirrels, and they have been trained to water ski. It's a pretty cool thing.
That just, my spirits have been lifted back up.
Exactly, right.
Twiggy, the water skiing squirrel. That is the best thing ever.
Now, fun fact though, squirrels will actually eat small birds and other squirrels as well as other snakes. So,
well, took another dip down. I was like, I can't shake these dark side of nature things, because
that was hot.
I saw one not long ago too, where this family had nurtured and raised this baby squirrel, and finally took it outside and sent it up a tree. And the dude is legit like crying, like I can't believe we're saying goodbye to it. And then in a split second, this cat runs up the tree, grabs it, and takes off of it. That's what you can find on that Instagram page. But
wow. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Tell us which one of those are your favorite. Share other stories. If you find them, send some links to us. We'd love to watch those. Apparently, we are very into that. So I like that. I like the better ones, like the squirrel water skiing, more than, people getting mauled.
I definitely like the heartwarming ones better. Personally.
So they're not serial killers.
I can't take my eyes off all of it, though. I love the good animal stories. I also love the unlikely animal friends.
Yeah, right.
Like I will tell you, for those of you listening, get on YouTube, check out Battle at Kruger Park. It's one of the greatest nature videos ever. It's the fight between the lions and the buffalo, and then the alligator gets involved. Have you ever seen that?
Oh, wow.
I'll show you guys later. Yeah. It's amazing to watch. But when you hear these stories of mankind taming animals, I'll be honest and say sometimes you can get a little cocky, right? You look at your dog and say, I have dominion over you.
Right.
I can teach you to do these things. Or I can also, get rid of you. Yeah. But when we run into some of these animals, sometimes we have scary encounters, whether it's a horsefly or a dog, or I'm going to share with you a story of my scariest animal encounter. And I've shared before that I've been in South Africa on a mission trip, and I got to go on a safari.
Just brag about it again.
Must be nice.
It must be nice, right? No. So in South Africa, I actually have a thing to show this. They have what's called the Big Five. So the Big Five are the elephant, the Cape buffalo, the black rhino, the leopard, and the lion. Mm-hmm. All right. What I'm getting ready to share is none of these animals. Mm-hmm. All right. But these are considered the most dangerous to hunt on foot.
Okay.
So imagine hunting all these animals on foot.
Right.
When I tell you the story about my animal, you'll think I'm an absolute moron. So I've never shared this with you guys, but I'm going to tell you because if I had my Apple Watch on, it would say I had a heart attack. It was just scary. But just to build up the story a little bit, I'm standing at Shishluwi-Mfolozi Game Reserve at a place called Hilltop Resort. So everyone in my group, my dad and my brother, are inside. I'm just walking around with the camera because there are literally animals just everywhere. I look up in a tree and I see this little guy just kind of hanging out up in the tree. And this is a vervet monkey, adorable, right? Mm-hmm. And there's like maybe a dozen of them just swinging through the trees. Like on all of your doors and locks, there were literally these little symbols that said, like, make sure doors are locked and windows are locked because they do know how to open doors and windows. Wow. And so I think this is really cool. Then I look over to the corner of my eye and I see this little fella just hanging out. This little baby vervet monkey underneath the front end of this Toyota SUV. And I just think he's absolutely adorable. I mean, look, you just want to cuddle the little guy, right?
Yeah.
Well, then I hear this noise that I'll never forget because all of a sudden, Mama comes to the rescue. I am too close to the little baby monkey. Mm-hmm. And the only way I can describe it, imagine a hiss and a growl mixed together. It's an eerie sound. And I never knew until this moment that monkeys had fangs. Like I thought they just had normal teeth, just kind of like you and me.
Scary.
But they are legitimately fangs. He came all the way to my feet and he wasn't alone. Because next came his friend to also help. And there's actually 3 in that picture. You can see 2 of them in the corner. If you look in the very top right corner, you can see his tail hanging out on the sidewalk there. So these 3 monkeys are now chasing me and like coming at me, like charging at me.
This is a King Louis situation from Jungle Book where they all just come out.
That's what I was imagining. But they're like,
dude, you were in the movie.
they're like doing like those little fake charges, hissing, growling, showing their fangs, like slapping towards me. Like they're within 2 feet of me. Now, all the things that go through your head. You've heard stories of people who had pet monkeys who like clawed themselves to death. Yeah. Then you had this other thought that of like, I'm quoting Genesis in my head that I have dominion over them. I think I could probably
just don't quote it to them.
I could probably pick him up and punt him, but I'm like, wait, what's the law here in South Africa?
Yeah.
If I can touch this animal, am I in trouble? So all I could do was do the quickest back pedal you've ever seen as I'm snapping photos with my dad's camera. I take off running backwards as I'm seeing these guys chasing after me, and I run through there's like a big sliding glass door. As soon as you go through the glass door, they stop. It's like they knew from experience never to go inside. I am like out of breath. My heart is pounding. I am still freaked out. I look at my dad and he's like, what in the world's wrong with you? Like I'm drenched in sweat. I'm like, I just got chased by a monkey. He's like, oh, shut up. No, he didn't. I'm like, I got him. And I had like 50 pictures. Like that was the best of the ones I had. Like 50 photos of all these monkeys.
I want to see the blurry ones.
The blurry ones.
You can't even see because you're moving so fast.
But like they were just, I mean, it was terrifying. These little guys who are like all of 2 feet tall at the most, just chasing after me. And like Todd didn't believe me, my dad didn't believe me, and it was seriously when I saw the other one pop out, I thought WWE like tag team style, like they're gonna like take me down by force. And I was like, how could something so little have so much power over top of me and like threaten me like that, right? And so when I started thinking about this, I started thinking through. I'm like, okay, we've seen in movie shows like Friends, right? We had Ross. You remember his Ross's monkey?
Marcel.
Marcel.
Oh, Marcel.
Marcel. And then the movie Night at the Museum. Anybody?
Man, what was
the
that?
monkey in that?
The monkey in that one? Dexter.
Okay.
Both are capuchin monkeys, which are very similar to these vervet monkeys. Both are adorable. But apparently, both could kill you in a heartbeat, right? And I think, how is it possible something so small could have so much power over me? Something so much, like I can tame these animals, apparently, right? We've seen that people have tamed them, but apparently we actually can't. And how can something so small be destructive and cause so much harm? Which brings us to the idea that we're going to talk about today, which if you go to the book of James, which is towards the end of your Bible, James was the brother of Jesus, and he writes this in James chapter 3, which I really should have quoted to these monkeys. They would have stopped. James says in chapter 3, all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures can and are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind. Right? I could have just made one of these guys my friend. They could have been my own little Marcel or my own little Dexter or whatever other monkey names you can come up with. But James goes on to say, but no human being can tame the tongue. It's a restless evil full of deadly poison. He says that all of humanity has the ability and the power to tame wild animals. But strongly, he says, no one can ever tame their own tongue. The full passage starts like this. He says, when we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the entire animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and driven by strong winds, they are steered by a small rudder, wherever the pilot wants to go. Verse 5, he says, likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue is also a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and itself is set on fire by hell. Crazy passage. And he just described this idea that we can control a 1,000-pound horse with a small bit in the mouth. Or we can think about other animals. We've tamed lions to jump through hoops at the circus. We can put a giant skirt on an elephant and make it stand on a big rubber ball. Right? All these different. I've seen videos of like bears riding like bicycles. We can do all that, but James says we cannot even control our own tongue. We cannot tame our own tongue. He says even though it's small, he says it's absolutely destructive. Thank you for that, Phil. It's so destructive. And he says it's a wicked part of the human body and it cannot be tamed. He says a few different things. One, it makes great boasts. I don't think we have to go far to see how mankind boasts on their own abilities, boasts like probably those guys like, I could tame a lion. And we see what happens to Joe Exotic, right? Like I can tame a lion, but then it backfires. Or we say, it says it can cause great pain and start wildfires. How many wildfires have we started with just a simple word that we've said or uttered? And the last, he says, it can corrupt the entire body and set the course of one's life. So even though we can train all those animals, all those different things, we cannot control or tame our tongue. We can speak good things about ourselves. We can speak good things about God. We can say good things about others, but also we can be destructive with what we say. The Apostle Paul writes in Romans 3:13 about the unrighteous when he says, their throats are open graves. Their tongues practice deceit. The poison of vipers is on their lips. But as Christians, what James is arguing is that we believe that when we encounter Jesus, then we follow him, everything should begin to change, including what we say, including our speech. So later it says in verse 9 of James 3, with the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who are made in the likeness of Jesus. Out of the same mouth comes praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? The imagery that James is presenting is this idea that of a well deep in our souls that produces water. And he's actually borrowing from Jesus, who said in John 7, if anyone thirsts after me, let him come and drink. Whoever believes in me, the scripture said, out of his heart will flow rivers of living water. So basically what James and Jesus are both saying is that what is deep inside you ultimately comes out through our speech, right? If we have hate down deep inside of us, our speech will be filled with hate. So as we grow closer to Jesus, then we'll never fully master the tongue, right? There's a little bit of hope and discouragement in that. We'll never fully be able to do. But as we become more like him, we begin to speak more like him and better our speech and better our example of love and how we speak. But sadly, I think all of us would agree that too often as believers, our speech is just as destructive as everyone else. I think the perfect example of this is if you ever get out there on church on Sunday, we'll sing songs of praise. We'll offer up prayers to God. We'll bless one another as we encourage one another. We'll extend a welcome. Go to lunch after church and just listen.
Yeah.
You hear gossip, slander, cursing, false accusations, lies, evil, words of abuse, words that tear down. And it's like, well, can you imagine, why in the world would that person ever come into our church? Can you believe that Pastor Phil was wearing skinny jeans with holes on the left leg today? Or all the different things that you hear us talking about. Was that recent?
Yeah.
It was. That's why
I was trying to remember if it was left leg or not. There are no jeans on me or skinny jeans.
I heard a conversation at B-Dubs, okay? They were talking about you. But then so all of that, we're supposed to be producing life and building one another up, but all we do sometimes is produce slander, gossip, as we cannot control the tongue. I mean, have you guys ever seen it personally in your own life where someone has just torn you down, or you've been maybe the root of the or the receiving end of the gossip or the slander? Has that been true of you all?
Yeah, I've been gossiped about a lot. No, it is true. And it's, I think some people more than others, like for me, like words really matter a lot for me. A lot of people say, well, it's not always just what you say, it's how you say it. Like tone matters a lot in how you communicate with people and about people too. But man, words matter a lot to me. I'll hang on to one little word and it'll just like make me spiral. And so words have definitely really hurt me. I was trying to think of, as you were talking about like the different little like cliche sayings you hear growing up. I think the biggest lie that we could tell our kids is that little like sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can never hurt me. Yeah. I probably repeated that over and over growing up.
It's a lie.
And the older I get, the more I'm like, that is so like false,
it's
like
garbage.
I don't think anyone could actually believe that in their heart because words hurt, man. I've been there and I've been on the other side of that where I'm hurting people with our words too. We fail to realize the weight that our words carry most of the time.
How about you?
Man, there's an illustration about toothpaste, right? Like you can get it out of the tube and squeeze it, but you can never get the toothpaste back in the tube. And that's like it is with our words. We say things and we end up apologizing, and that's good, especially if we're sincere, but the wound is still there,
right?
And you can't take that back. Another one of those sayings is, I'm rubber and you're glue, and whatever you say bounces off of me. Now, that one is a little bit true in that sometimes the things that people say more about themselves than it does about the other person.
For sure.
Yeah, but no,
I'm
still
a sponge,
hurts.
man.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I'm absorbing every word you say.
I'm glue. That's it. That's the same.
Just, I'm glue. The words are going to stick to me and they will die with me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say I had a couple different quotes. I was just kind of looking at a couple things that really stood out to me. One of them was from Yehuda Berg. It says, words have energy and power with the ability to help, to heal, to hinder, to hurt, to harm, to humiliate, and to humble. All H's, which is pretty impressive.
That was impressive.
But it's so true. Like, man, we forget the power that we have when we speak words to people, that we could either make their day, ruin their day. We could humiliate them, or we could elevate them and lift them up. Like, I had one other quote that I really liked. It was, be mindful when it comes to your words. A string of some that don't mean much to you may stick with someone else for a lifetime. And I know, like you just asked us, personal experiences. There are things like that somebody said to me, to my face, or just kind of an earshot of me that I still can vividly hear over and over again in my brain.
Yeah, some of those I've used as motivation in life. There's other ones that I still get bummed out when I think about it.
Yeah.
The things that people have said.
Do you find yourself ever getting triggered when somebody says something like, or in your mind, you hear it the way that someone else said it and meant it?
Yeah, like that one thing kind of made you paranoid.
Right,
And moving forward, there's like little trigger words.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. If you, like, for example, like in ministry, we talk about, like, we don't talk about hiring pastors. We talk about calling pastors, right? And so this idea, I had a person who was at one point a mentor in my life, and he kind of became a turd. And but he said at one point, and he's like,
dude, those were mean words.
right? Just being honest. What he did was turdish.
Yeah.
He looked at me. He's like, Scott, I really kind of doubt God's calling on your life.
Oh, jeez.
I'm like, what a jerk. And like, I hear that sometimes. Even when you're like, what do you feel like God's called you to do? I just hear his voice in the back of my mind. So that's one of those words I easily get triggered by.
We carry him with us.
Yeah. And so I want to quote another one. This is sort of similar, but the great theologian Jimmy John. Jimmy John Subs.
No
right?
way.
So if you ever go to Jimmy John's, there are like signs all over
Free
the room.
smells, by the
Free
way.
smells is one of his best quotes. But there's another one he had. It was in Parkersburg. I think it was like something to the extent of the number one most deadly weapon known to humanity is gossip. Like how quickly a lie, how quickly a rumor can just destroy someone's life.
Yeah.
It can cause and start wars. Like it can do all kinds of stuff. And so what's the hope then we have of this? Like, how, if we can never control fully or tame fully the tongue, what do we do? Well, James actually says earlier in chapter 1, verse 19, he says, everybody should be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry.
Yeah.
And I think in our world today, especially a polarized society that we live in, everyone is quick to offer their opinion, right? Everyone's quick to make a post. Everyone's quick to argue. Everyone's quick to do all kinds of things. But as Christians, it says we should be quick to listen. Now, most of us don't want to do that because usually what we're going to hear is something we don't like.
Yeah.
But usually whenever you do listen, you can have empathy for the other person. And what you're doing is you're showing honor. But if you're quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, I think all those three things are tied together.
Yeah.
Right. And so the idea is that the more you spend time with Jesus, I think these kind of become natural. The more we spend time with him as we grow in him, because we see Jesus staying silently whenever he's accused.
Yeah.
Staying silently as he's hurled insults. People are yelling, crucify him. He's standing there silently, right? He didn't have to speak. He just stood there quietly. I think we learn a good example of that. And so as I want you to start thinking about that throughout your day today, ask yourself, this is a hard question, but what did I say today that would hurt somebody else's life? Or what did I say that would elevate somebody? Yeah, so my friend back in Huntington, I'm sorry for calling you a turd. What you did was turdish, but I'm going to apologize for calling you a turd. But he points out quickly, maybe you caught it earlier, he says, we curse those who are made in the image of God.
Right.
Everyone is made in the image of God, so therefore they are deserving of honor and respect just as much as we are. So therefore we should only offer up words to one another that are honoring and worthy of respect. So does your speech build up? Does it honor? Does it encourage? Or on the flip side, is your speech only ones that slander, destroy, tear down, or start fires? Because it's only revealing what is down deep inside you. And I would challenge you to really consider, what encounter have you had with Jesus, and what are you doing in your relationship with him? Because as we spend more time with him, we'll begin to look more like him, and which one will begin to speak more like him.
Yep. We all work youth pastors, I think middle school boys can be some of the ones that they don't always have a bad heart about it, but they can say things that are very hurtful. There was a time that I wanted to murder a 13-year-old boy that had told my wife that she looked uglier without her glasses on.
So
I'm like, what are you saying? Like, to her face, said it. I'm sitting right there with her, and I never wanted to murder a kid before more in my life. But we can do that. And so I remember quoting often, and you guys probably have done this too, but the old adage of like, think before you speak. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it?
Mine's always, is it wise?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it has doing an acronym. You were right in the middle.
Did I ruin it?
Is it true? Is it helpful? Now it's wise. I got to put a W in the word think.
Oh, that's what you were doing? Yeah. I didn't catch that's what you were doing.
What is the I?
Maybe I should
inspiring.
be,
Inspiring.
maybe I should be slow to speak and quick to listen.
I think it's true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, and kind.
Yes.
Okay.
And the ones that are obvious is like, okay, I need to be kind. The ones that are a little bit harder are necessary. Do I need to say this to this person? In that instance where this kid was being super mean, like, you didn't need to say that. You can think those things in your head if you want to. She looks better without. Okay, fine. Is it necessary? Is it inspiring? Does it lift somebody up?
Yeah, that's
is
a good question.
Helpful? Is it kind or truthful? And sometimes that's a hard one too, because sometimes it is hard to be truthful and kind at the same time, and to say somebody that's like, hey, you got a booger hanging out of your nose, like that is a kind thing to tell someone in an appropriate way, like to the side, not up in front of a stage full of people. Look at that guy.
You got booger.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Those are good questions to ask. We need to ask ourselves, or just try to be thoughtful before we say anything. I think it was in Celebration of Discipline, a book about spiritual disciplines by Richard Foster. He talks about silence, and, going into it, I just assumed, okay, going to a quiet place. Right. And that's part of it. But some of it is also being intentional about, hey, today, before I say anything, before I open my mouth, I'm going to think about everything. And it's like, dude, you find yourself saying a lot less words, but saying a lot more meaningful words.
Yeah.
And you start less fires, and you start lifting people up more with fewer words.
And make sure you understand, this is not just in your one-on-one, like you're telling somebody something, but it's also in your gossip.
Yeah.
Like apply that to gossip. Do I need to share this? Is this even my story to tell to somebody? Is this even helpful? Right. Yeah. If somebody was telling this story about you, would you appreciate it?
Right.
And usually as Christians, let's be honest, we say, I have a prayer request for a friend. You just really want to blabber
It's really
something that
subtle.
you should not talk about. And then
Poor old
just don't do, if
Nancy.
you're going to do the prayer request, just say unspoken at that point. That's really the only time I usually think that's a helpful thing to say.
Right.
Be praying for her family. Let me tell you all about her.
You can look on
Right.
Facebook recently. You probably get it, right?
Bless her heart.
I heard somebody say one time, like, talk about people behind their backs, but say the right things.
Yeah.
So like, instead of talking about people in a negative way, like, how can I, even though Scott doesn't know that I'm saying good things about him right now, how can I just like lift him up in our conversation at lunch?
There's a quote from The Office where the boss, Michael, is talking to another employee and says, I would never tell Pam this, but she is the most inspiring and artistic and creative and wonderful employee that we have. He's like, why would you not tell her that? And so that's the challenge, is to say, like you said, to say the right types of things behind people. And if you're not part of the problem and you're not part of the solution, we probably don't need to jump into all these
Don't be
things.
part of the discussion.
Yeah, exactly. So
be very careful. And it's not, it's what you say to people, it's what you tweet about, what you post about, and do so in an honoring way. If you're struggling with this on social media, my old view is, before you post, don't. Like just it's like the whole, think before you speak, before you post, just don't. Right. So if you can't say anything honoring or loving to somebody, just don't talk. Maybe that's the best thing. Maybe you should take a vow of silence the rest of your life.
Share some videos of Twiggy, the water skiing.
Yeah, just go back and watch that squirrel.
Yeah. Christian the lion, all the heartwarming stuff. Yeah. Forget about everything else.
And obviously, these are things that, we don't have mastered either. And,
clearly
every time I talk about this, it's like, I could do so much better.
Yeah. I think we've had conversations before too, where it's like, we kind of, one of us just, Hey, you know what we've been really bad about lately?
Yeah, exactly.
Is not really being positive and kind.
That's
with
actually
how
why we
talk
brought
about
this
other
up
people.
today.
This is actually intervention. Me and Phil and all of our weirdos are here to intervene in your life.
I just gossip too much. But yeah, find some people to hold you accountable, and your normal group that you talk to. Maybe kind of stop before things escalate and snowball into this big gossip session. Maybe stop and ask, like, hey, maybe we shouldn't talk like this today. How can we be kind? How can we be inspiring? And how can we be helpful with our words?
And not being negative is in the same boat as that too. Like a positive outlook, a hopeful outlook, especially for the people around you. Let's have hope that maybe this time they'll be a little bit different than all these things I have in my mind.
Think about the person you talk about most, right? Usually it's going to be something negative, if we're being honest. If somebody's living rent free in your brain and in your speech, you may have a problem honoring other people.
Yeah.
That's something I've learned. So that's all we got today. So I want to thank these guys for their amazing facts. I'm going to let Phil wrap us up today and tell you what you're supposed to do.
Make sure that you go and comment on Instagram and Facebook, YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, that's awesome. We love that. But go ahead and jump in the comments too. Make sure you share it and all that kind of stuff. We need to get the word out there. And man, we are just having a blast with this and just having a great time talking to you guys. And
don't start fights in the comments. Build one another up. If you see Sigmund post something that you disagree with, say, hey, that's a great opinion.
Right.
Dare you all to jump in the comments and say something encouraging to somebody else in the comments.
Not to us.
And so you know, Janie, too, we know what we're getting into by asking you to vote for the weirdest one. And it's all in good fun. It won't actually hurt our feelings.
I also saw a comment that she said she'd bring donuts to us from JR's.
Hey. Oh, man, we'll have her on the show if she does.
You'll be our next guest after Dino.
Well, that's awesome. Hey, we love you guys so much. And we want to remind you that we're talking about having a faith that is different. And this is something that would set us apart, having a tongue that doesn't tear down and instead builds people up. So let's get weird, because normal isn't working.
We love you, weirdos.